but you can get a good idea of what your base metabolism is using a generic BMR calculator or basal metabolic rate calculator. You could Google one of these and just input your height, weight, age, and it'll give you a good rough estimate of what your actual basal metabolic rate is. Just by having more lean muscle tissue on your body. When you have more lean muscle tissue on your body, you're able to burn more calories at rest because maintaining muscle takes a lot more calories than any other tissue. So if you take the time to build lean muscle tissue, if you add only 5 pounds of lean muscle, which isn't a lot across your whole body, it doesn't take up too much space, your physique doesn't change drastically, but now you give yourself the flexibility and ability to eat more calories at rest without it leading to fat gain because you have more muscle. So if you're looking to increase your metabolism through improving your basal metabolic rate, make sure that you're doing training that is helping to add lean muscle tissue or maintain lean muscle tissue on your body. Because again, the more calories you can burn at rest, the easier it is going to be for you to maintain fat loss because you can eat more calories without gaining the weight back. The next way that you can influence your metabolism to burn more calories is by using the thermic effect of food. Aiming for foods that burn more calories through digestion is going to be a really helpful way for you to burn calories just by eating food. One way to do this, and probably the best way to do this, is by incorporating more protein into your diet. 1,000 calories of protein versus 1,000 calories of carbs or fat will burn 35% more calories through digestion. If you're eating 2,000 calories in a day and you ate all 2,000 calories from carbs and fats, you're gonna burn 35% less calories through digestion if you ate all 2,000 calories from protein. That's a lot of protein. Definitely don't recommend you eating 2,000 calories worth of protein, but just to help you to understand the impact that just adding more protein to your diet has to your fat loss goals. I always like to aim for 1 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight of protein with my coaching clients so that they can have a successful fat loss phase that's going to keep them burning calories effectively and also just maintaining a healthy body. Protein is going to be essential for that as well, but that's not the topic that we're talking about today. It's important to note that if you have over 20 pounds to lose, this number is for your lean body mass or your goal weight, whichever is easiest for you to calculate. If you know that you're going to be around 120 pounds or ideally want to be around 120 pounds, then aiming for 120 to 140 grams of protein on a daily basis is going to be great. If you know you want to be around 150 pounds, aiming around 150 to 170 is also going to be pretty good. As long as you're pretty close to that number most days, you're doing a great job. That's going to be, again, ideal for fat loss, but being a little bit lower, being kind of close to it, 0.8 to 1.0 gram per pound of body weight is a pretty solid job too, if that's all you can do. To put it simply, if you're looking to increase a calorie deficit by improving your thermic effect of food calorie burnage, you can look to see how much protein you're averaging on a day-to-day basis and just add 10 to 20 grams per day doing that. If right now you're only eating 70 to 80 grams, bump it up to 80 to 90 grams and just make that really simple adjustment, that simple addition of food in one meal or as a snack or with a protein shake to help you get more protein with the same calorie total. You don't have to jump up to 1.0 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight right away. Start with what you can. Just aim to have more protein from what you're having right now, and you're increasing your calorie deficit by doing that. Just by adding more protein, you're increasing your calorie deficit. You don't have to have all the protein to make it happen. Small calorie deficit is still a calorie deficit, so every little bit counts. Now, the next aspect of your metabolism that you can influence to create a greater calorie deficit is your NEAT activity. So this is the non-exercise activity that we talked about, and the best way to actually measure this is going to be through how many daily steps you take. How often do you walk? How often do you move around? It's obviously going to be really hard to measure how much you talked, how much you moved with your hands. You're not going to be able to keep track of that, and that's way too meticulous, and no one needs to go to that kind of extreme. But just keeping track of how many steps you have throughout the day, how often you're walking, going from place to place, really adds up. I generally like to recommend, for health purposes as well as fat loss purposes, being between the 7,000 to 12,000 steps per day mark and just trying to move every hour to some degree, whether it's just down the hall and back if you're working or stopping for your lunch break and going on a longer walk. As long as you're staying active throughout the day, you are doing your due diligence to help increase your calorie deficit. So if you're looking to increase your calorie deficit through adding NEAT activity, see how many steps you're having right now. Look to add 500 to 1,000 more steps a day. And once you're able to do that consistently, see if you could add more, but try to make as much of an effort as you can to be more active every single day. And then the last aspect of your metabolism where you are going to be burning calories is with your training. Making sure that you're choosing the right type of training is going to be super effective in your short-term and long-term progress with fat loss. Like we talked about earlier with the basal metabolic rate, you want to be on a strength training program that is helping to build or maintain lean muscle tissue, because for your basal metabolic rate, you're going to improve calorie burn that way in the long term. But in the short term, you're also going to be burning more calories doing strength training than you are with cardio. The reason being is that while you're going through strength training, while you're working out, challenging your muscles, creating a burn, building a pump, you're breaking down muscle tissues in the gym. And even though in the session itself, compared to, let's say, cardio, 1 hour of strength training won't burn as much calories as 1 hour of cardio, you're going to be burning calories for the next 24 to 36 hours strength training as your body tries to rebuild the lean muscle tissue. That takes energy, that takes calories to rebuild. Making that the focus and focal point of your training activity is going to help you burn more calories in the short term and the long term, and just look leaner and more toned the way most people want to when they're trying to lose weight. As I mentioned with cardio, it's a nice addition to have, but it shouldn't be the focal point of your training. The calories you burn during a cardio session is all the calories that you're going to be burning. Your metabolism will be elevated for another 3 hours after cardio, but after those 2-3 hours are up, you're not burning calories anymore. As opposed to strength training, where 24 to 36 hours after you're done working out, when you're at home sitting down watching Netflix after your workout, you're going to be burning calories because you need to recover from your training. So with this aspect of your metabolism, you really want to make sure that you are on a smart strength training program that is looking to build or maintain lean muscle tissue for you, so that you can burn the most calories while dieting and maintain the fat loss long term after the diet is over. Okay, so that is how you can create a calorie deficit through burning more calories by increasing your metabolism. Now, the other way to do it is by decreasing your intake. And this one is where most people like to do because they feel like it's the simplest thing to do. But doing this accurately and consistently can be much, much more difficult than looking to improve your metabolism. Everyone's scenario is different, so choose which one works for you. And obviously you can choose to do a little bit of both, but don't overcommit to both at the same time, or you'll be burning the candle on both ends and really wearing yourself out for one, but also potentially hurting yourself physiologically and hormonally in the long term if you maintain the deficit for too long. Getting into reducing calorie intake can go a couple different ways, but the first and most important thing is knowing how many calories you're already consuming on a day-to-day basis. If you don't know how many calories you're having, you're going to be guessing a random number to do with your deficit. So what I always like to do with starting off with clients is we will track food for 1 week period without changing anything, with no change in the diet protocol, no instructions on what to do. I just want to see how you're eating and what you're doing regularly already, so we know the best place to start. Most people aren't ready to diet when they start working with me, so we go through this awareness period and probably a priming phase to help build their metabolism, so that when they do start the diet phase, or the fat loss accelerator phase as I like to call it, they are a fat burning machine and everything melts off pretty quickly. But getting back to the point, you want to have an awareness around what you're eating and how much you're eating right now. You can guesstimate how many calories you're having, but if you never actually logged your food with an app like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer and taken the time to actually measure the different things you're eating, you're leaving your results up to chance. So get that awareness first and foremost. See how many calories you're actually eating and drinking on a day-to-day basis, and figure out where the easiest place to cut out calories is, or maybe to replace calories as well. Again, protein is going to be burning more calories for you through digestion than any other food. Maybe you find that you're under consuming protein, and instead of reducing your calories, you just increase your protein intake under the same calories. That's creating a calorie deficit without changing the amount of food you're eating, the amount of calories you're eating, but just by changing the food choices that you're making. But if you are eating and consuming an adequate amount of protein right now, you can create a calorie deficit by reducing the total amount of calories that you are consuming. You can choose to reduce your calories anywhere between 5 to 20%. The more aggressive that you are choosing to create the deficit with, the shorter you want to be on that deficit, because a deficit isn't actually healthy. It's not what your body wants. Your body doesn't want to lose fat. You want to lose fat, but resisting that with your body and trying to fight against it can lead to those physiological and hormonal health problems further on down the line. So if you're doing a really aggressive deficit of 20 or more percent, which isn't always advisable, I would recommend talking with a nutrition coach, dietitian, or your doctor about that first. I wouldn't recommend being on that for longer than 12 to 16 weeks. However, if you are doing a less aggressive calorie deficit, not only can you be on that calorie deficit for longer, but you can also give yourself room to cut out calories in the future. So there's no right or wrong way to approach this. This is a very individualized discussion. And if you want to talk about your specific scenario and what you should be doing to lose weight, feel free to schedule a free strategy call with me with the link in the description. But the important thing here is that you choose what amount you're going to start with, continue to measure your food accurately, and make sure that you're actually doing the deficit that you said, not just thinking that you're doing it, and do that all while maintaining activity. Where a lot of people go wrong is they'll start eating fewer calories. Let's say they start eating 1,800 calories, but because they're eating fewer calories, they have less energy, they're subconsciously moving less. So now their NEAT activity is lower, and now it's a net zero in the calorie loss. You're not losing or burning more calories than you're consuming, you're just maintaining, and that creates a stall in your progress. And even though you think you're doing a calorie deficit because you only focused on the one part of the equation, because the other part of the equation, the activity part of the equation changed, you're actually not burning more calories than you're consuming or eating less calories than you're burning. You're doing the exact same amount and now you're maintaining. So always make sure if you are making a change, whether through activity or through diet, you are staying consistent with the other variables. Your steps are still the same, you're still training the same amount, or you're eating the same amount of food if you increase steps and increase training activity. So now that we've broken down the different parts of your diet and the different parts of your metabolism, here are the key things that you can control and should be worrying about when looking to create a calorie deficit. One is your total calorie intake on a day-to-day basis. You need to know this and be aware of it and understand it to make sure that you are staying consistent with this. Your total protein intake in the number of grams that you're having. There's an ideal number of grams, but as long as you're increasing your protein slowly over time, you are creating more and more of a calorie deficit while maintaining your calorie intake. Your total steps per day. This is going to be how you measure NEAT activity and making sure that you stay active through the calorie deficit and aren't slowly and subconsciously moving less as a result of the calorie deficit. And lastly, your training activity, how often you're training and the type of training that you're doing, making sure that strength training is the focal point and not relying on cardio, just using it as a supplement to that training. So the key points to make sure that you are in a calorie deficit is, one, seeing the number on the scale change. This doesn't happen for everybody, so I don't always recommend relying only on the scale, but this can be a helpful metric if you're using weekly averages to see change over time. You can see an example here of a client of mine where we use weekly averages to measure weight loss. Day to day, the weight goes up and down, and that is completely normal to experience. There's a lot of things that influence the scale weight on a day-to-day basis, but the weekly average is trending downward, and that's what you really want to look at to see if you're actually losing weight and in a calorie deficit effectively. The next thing that you can measure is going to be inches, taking measurements around your body and getting objective numerical data for how many inches are across your chest, across your midsection, across your hips, thighs, arms, all these different places. If you are in a calorie deficit and losing fat, sometimes you don't lose weight on the scale, but sometimes you'll lose inches more effectively in this phase. So this is another helpful metric to keep track of to make sure that you're still in a calorie deficit and actually losing the weight. The other two things are a little bit more subjective, but still helpful gauges of progress. You see yourself in the mirror looking thinner, you see more definition, more muscle definition across your body, flexed or unflexed. Either way is a good sign of losing fat. And your clothes are fitting better, they're looser. This tight shirt that you had 2 weeks ago is now fitting better on the arms, is a little looser in the midsection. That is a good sign that you're losing fat. Again, you can experience loss in inches, clothes fitting better, without experiencing weight loss, a number on the scale going down. And that's important to know, because sometimes we'll rely too heavily on the scale to know whether we're in a calorie deficit or not, but it doesn't tell the full story. So stupid simple summary on calorie deficits. Calorie deficit isn't a type of diet. It's not something that you do, but something you experience as a result of the things you can control, which is going to be your total calorie intake, your total protein intake, your NEAT activity, how many steps you take on a daily basis, and the training that you do every single day. You can create a calorie deficit by increasing NEAT, increasing training, decreasing calorie intake, or increasing protein intake. You don't have to do all of these all at once. You can choose any one of these to change right now, and you will be creating more of a calorie deficit. It doesn't have to be extreme either. You can move up 500 steps a day, and that's creating more of a calorie deficit. You could add 20 grams of protein, and that's creating more of a calorie deficit. But to create a calorie deficit, you need to know where you're at right now and then choose what you want to change and stick to that change throughout the duration of the diet. Share this with a friend that also might be struggling with their calorie deficit and wondering why they are stuck and stalling with their weight loss. And if you have any questions or want to talk more in depth about your specific situation, make sure to schedule that free strategy call with me through the link in the description. And until next time, stay stupid.